Coaster battle. Iron Gwazi versus Steel Vengeance. Yes, the battle between the two North American hyper-hybrids. A lot of coaster YouTubers have voiced their opinion between these two roller coasters, and there never seems to be a clear-cut number one. And even for me, these coasters go number 1 and number 2 in my rankings. However, they're very different rides trying to accomplish different things. Steel Vengeance focuses more on airtime moments and inversions, while Iron Gwazi focuses more on laterals and pacing. That being said, let's get straight into the video. The first category will be theming. Starting off with Steel Vengeance, which doesn't really have much theming at all. The only two major points of theming I can think of are a few signs in the queue and a, to their credit, pretty detailed backstory made by Cedar Point that really should have been shown and put out more. And Iron Gwazi isn't much better, with the only two major points of theming I can think of being the nicely themed vehicles and various buildings in the area sporting the Iron Gwazi name in some way. Overall, I give this category to Iron Gwazi. However, I'm only going to award it half of a point due to not only how slim of a margin it won by, but also because both of these attractions have pretty lackluster theming, especially for being the best ride at their respective parks. The second category will be presentation. Before I start this category, I want to say that both of these rides have, to their credit, very good presentations. Starting off with Steel Vengeance, which is positioned, in my opinion, pretty well at the very back of the park. I also really like how it's right next to Maverick, which kind of has a cohesive theme with Steel Vengeance, which is what I like. It also feels secluded from the rest of the parks because of the train tracks that separate Steel Vengeance from the rest of the park. Steel Vengeance also feels like it has a demanding presence at the back of the park, and that it sort of looms over everything else there. And Iron Gwazi has a very intimidating look of the lift hill as you enter the park. You can quite literally see it for miles while pulling up to BJT. And I really like how that purple track pops in the Florida sun. Another thing is that steel truss lift hill gives it a much more intimidating look. Sort of like I-305, or now Project 305, at King's Dominion. Overall, I give this category again to Iron Gwazi. Because it is the tallest ride in the park, and the only thing that's really close to SheiKra, it feels like it commands over the landscape more than Steel Vengeance does. I also really like the look of that purple track. The third category will be operations, starting again with Steel Vengeance, which overall has some pretty good operations. It almost always runs 2 or 3 trains, and the ride operators checked restraints fast. The only bad part I can think of is that it has lines that are very long almost every day. Iron Gwazi, on the other hand, had a 30-minute plus wait on an empty day. It also had pretty slow restraint checking, and from what I've heard, sometimes only runs 1 train, which is just not acceptable at a chain park as big as Busch Gardens Tampa. Steel Vengeance easily wins this category. Iron Gwazi's biggest criticism from me is the horrendous operations. I believe, though, that given time, BGT can get this figured out, and consistently run 3 trains, and have fast restraint checking. The final category for this video will be ride experience. For this category, I'm actually going to do something a little bit different. For this category, I will score each ride out of 5. And I'm actually going to start with Iron Gwazi, as it's leading by half of a point. Iron Gwazi has great pacing, okay elements, and some good, but not plentiful, airtime. And it has really good sequencing. Overall, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. This leaves Steel Vengeance. If it earns a 5 out of 5, then there will be a tiebreaker. Steel Vengeance has good pacing, great inversions, both quality and quantity of airtime, It's also very long and has okay sequencing. Overall, it came down to the wire, but I think Steel Vengeance earns a 5 out of 5 because of the quantity of airtime and the ride's length. This leads us to the tiebreaker, which will be which park I personally prefer. Now, I love BGT and Iron Gwazi, but Cedar Point is the better park, and thus has the better coaster. Both of these rides are absolute monsters, and are so much fun to ride. I can easily see how someone would put either of these rides at their number 1 spot. And I know a ton of you are arguing in the comments about how I am wrong. And that's the fun part about roller coaster rankings. They're completely subjective. And one bad or good re-ride on one of these beasts could switch up my rankings. If you enjoyed this video, you should subscribe. I make high quality videos just like this one nearly every week. Thanks for watching. Bye!